Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in today about Weekly Shonen Jump Issue number 43 of 2025. I hope you all are doing well. I know I'm doing well. It's been about 3 weeks since I recorded one of these Weekly Shonen Jump videos, being that, I posted one a few days ago, hopefully at the release of this video. What I'm about to say is, it took me 3 weeks to edit the last episode of this series, and I know it really doesn't bode well for this episode coming out in a timely manner, but you know what, maybe I'll get it done. I'm going to say this right now. I'm recording this video on the 11th, or no, not the 11th, the 12th of November of 2025 at 2:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And hopefully the goal for this video is to get it up this same exact day. Now, I fully don't know if that's going to happen, but you know what? If it's December 13th, whenever you're watching this video, and the video released that day, just know that's what we call Glowplasma L here in the business, right? But either way, I hope you all are doing well. I'm doing exceptionally well. It's honestly a little weird being I recorded one of these videos 3 weeks ago, and it was all sunny, sunshine, and rainbows outside. And now we're sitting down, and I had snow where I live 2 days ago. Granted, it's gone now, and we're back up to the mid 50-degree weather mark, but bro, I saw my first snow of the year. It was absolutely amazing, and during that snow, I read this issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, and I really want to talk about it because, damn, this issue was just really good, all things considered. I mean, we have, how many series to talk about today? 14. Wow, we actually have a lot of manga to get through. But, there are just so many really awesome chapters in here, and I feel like this is going to be a long video just because, man, I want to talk about that entire Witch Watch chapter. That Akane-banashi chapter was amazing. Ruri Dragon had one of the best, I'm going to say pseudo reveals that I feel that I've almost ever read in a manga in a naming convention, right? It's we just have so much good, I didn't even talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo yet. That chapter, I came into the Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo being this series is going to be okay. It's just more Gege Yakutami writing stuff, but damn, this chapter was amazing. So, we just got so much great to talk about. So, I guess let's just, hop into it. Oh, before we get started, let me just quickly mention that the issue cover for Weekly Shonen Jump this week is Sakamoto Days. I normally try to mention that. I often forget. It's got one of the characters on it. I don't know. I don't read Sakamoto Days, so I don't particularly care. But for all of you who are out there, and, the only thing I know about Sakamoto Days is, there was that whole thing about the tunnel effect at one point, right? I think I watched 2 episodes of the anime and then just, never really went back into it. But I don't know. I'm not talking about Sakamoto Days here in this video, right? But if you don't know what I am talking about, just look here on my screen. And if, you're listening on audio platforms, I'll read them off. I'm talking about Kagurabachi, Ichi the Witch, Ruri Dragon, Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Somewhat Hertz, Harukaze Mound, Ekiden Bros, Pong, Peril, Hima-Ten, Ultimate Exorcist, Kiyoshi, Akane-banashi, Blue Box, Elusive Samurai, and Witch Watch in this video. So I'm going to be going through discussing all 14 of these series I read in Weekly Shonen Jump this week, and at the very end of the video, I'm going to be sitting down and ranking them from what was my favorite chapter of the week all the way down to my least favorite chapter of the week, and all of the other 12 spots in between. And as I mentioned a second ago, there's just so much great manga that I can't wait to talk about. So, let's just go ahead and get started with Kagurabachi chapter number 94. This chapter is titled The Second Arrow. And of course, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but I do a full-length series on Kagurabachi on my YouTube channel at Glowplasma, so go check it out there if you want to see a 30-minute video on this chapter of Kagurabachi, and not just the brief few things I've got to say about it here, right? But either way, getting into this chapter, it is really getting to the whole idea of who is the traitor in the Kagurabachi Kabunabi, right? And as we learn, it is this man named Kasa. Really, we get more confirmation for that next chapter, being that I've already, Kagurabachi is the one Weekly Shonen Jump series I stay caught up with no matter what's going on, right? But pretty much we get revealed that it's Kasen, the actual leader of the Kabunabi. And we pretty much see that as he's going down, there's this whole idea of the Shinichi has spirit energy already stored inside of it that really makes it a dangerous weapon to be transported to Hakure's storehouse, right? And eventually, by the time we get to the very end of this chapter, we understand that Yora was actually the person who put their spirit energy into this enchanted blade, and by that proxy, he is able to use the powers of the Magatsumi just through his body without the actual sword really needed, right? And it's just this really cool thing where we just understand where eventually Ichi comes to the realization of oh my gosh, if someone at the time was charging the enchanted blade of spirit energy, and there's another person trying to cover it up whenever we were sealing it, oh my gosh, that would be a big traitor, and the only few people who'd be capable of covering that up are the three of us who is sealing the blade pretty much. Eventually, just like I mentioned, getting this whole idea of Yora is now wielding the power of the Magatsumi, and he's got this really cool line at the end of the chapter. He's just like, hey, with this power, we will overthrow you. And yeah, just a really good chapter of Kagurabachi. As I normally mention, Kagurabachi, I read this chapter like 7 weeks ago, so my opinion on it has sort of dulled over time. Initially, I'm like, man, this is really cool and awesome, or not really that much, being that I did have a major issue with the traitor reveal at the time. But eventually, after sitting down and sort of talking on a podcast about it and a few other things, I've been like, okay, I sort of get what Hokuzono is going for here a little bit more. So honestly, it may help Kagurabachi that I read this chapter a long time ago and not like the other day when I read the rest of these chapters, right? But either way, I liked Kagurabachi for what it gave us this week, and a very interesting reveal of like, oh, Yora is wielding the Shinuchi powers, sort of, right? And really, that's not where I thought this arc was going to be going, and as general, that's what Hokuzono does really well, is be like, yeah, fun fact, this is happening now, right? But yeah, I really enjoyed Kagurabachi this week. If we want to talk about really interesting chapters, let's move on to Ichi the Witch, chapter number 51. This chapter is titled To a New Time. And oh my gosh, we just have like a general cover page for this chapter. We just see it's like, hey, Desscaras is here along with Ichi, pretty much all of the new team Desscaras. We see Kumagi and of course Gokuraku here as well, right? And I love how this chapter starts because it's just like Gokuraku being like, hey guys, look, my arm grew back, right? And of course what he means is that finally the wands and like science department here at the Man and Witches Association finally put his entire arm back together. And I just love how he's going through and boasting like, guys, my arm has like a rocket launcher and like my knees have flamethrowers in them. Like, it's so cool, right? But eventually the main, like, wand of that department, I think that's what they were calling him, like, wand was, like, the uppest, like, highest up mage or whatever, right? But either way, of the, like, wands in whatever department, I forget what it's actually called. I'm just bullshitting here, hoping I get it right, pretty much. But either way, Love Jo comes by just being like, hey, that's actually not how it works. And she's just like, hey, Desscaras, good thing you're here for your entire team, because I just got the stuff you ordered ready. And we just see these are none other than magic hoverboards, also known as comet models, pretty much, right? And it's this whole thing of like, hey, these are vehicles for personal flight. Pretty much, if you guys don't want to like take a wagon somewhere, you can get there pretty quickly, pretty much by riding a witch's broom, except it's a magic, like, technical hoverboard. Like, the way that this series is not only blending like the fantasy aesthetic of like, oh, fantasy, magic and all of this, but also sort of implementing this sort of like magic tech at the same time, while not having like it solely based on magic tech, is a very interesting thing. And I just love how it's portrayed here of like, oh yeah, just magic hoverboards, they exist, don't think about it, right? And when it's not like a science fiction thing where it's like, so the magic hoverboards actually work by like taking the magic diodes and breaking it down into electrical signals that feel, it's like, no, magic hoverboards, we'll just do that pretty much, right? And also, there's a really cool thing where Love Jo just explains, like, hey, you pretty much have to pour your magic energy into it and they sort of start to fly, but you have to keep yourself balanced on it, and a lot of people actually find it really difficult. And of course, we turn the page and see Ichi is just succeeding riding this hoverboard. He's doing like all of these tricks, doing it like in a 360 curving around, and I love how Love Jo's just like, well, I gotta admit, you've got a talent for that, you know what I'm saying? And it's just honestly a really funny thing. And then we get this whole idea of, like, of course, whenever we first met Kumagi, she was also riding a magic tool that was built for flight, pretty much, right? And this sort of, like, carriage thing with all of her various, like, baggage stuff, like her delivery mobile, pretty much, right? And we just get the whole idea that Kumagi's not very good at controlling her power, or she doesn't really have enough power, so she's sort of going to have to ride with Desscaras' tag team on the way there, right? And we also just get all of the ideas like, hey, here are other magic tools for flight, like you have skates that can do it, bicycles, dinghies, pretty much, and like, hey, there are a lot of different ways that you can end up getting from one place to another using magic-enhanced devices, pretty much, right? And of course, as all this is going on, they're in this like big workshop, and there's all of these things hanging on the walls and boxes just here in the room. And as Ichi's just looking around, he's like, yeah, like there's still a lot of stuff I don't know about. And he sort of trails off as we just see a broom in a placard on the wall here in the research and development storage room. And Ichi's just like, oh, what's that? As we get like a whole full page spread, just seeing Ichi staring here at this broom. And Love Joe just explains like, hey, this is actually a really old thing. It's called a flight broom, and people say that brooms used to pick their people, and that model in particular is like an absolute beast of a unit pretty much, right? Like you need the whole aptitude plus a whole lot of practice to ride one of these magic brooms. They were used a lot in the old days, but now they're just basically fancy antiques. And Ichi's like, wow, a broom, it's beautiful, right? And again, this is going back to that whole idea of like, yeah, typical fantasy witches just ride brooms, and sort of in the moment saying to like, oh, not all of them are doing that. Like, that's this old tech. Like, of course, like everything else, there will be technological innovation, and at some point, the brooms just go out of style. I don't know how Osamu Nishiki and who all writes this series. I should know by now, yeah. Osamu Nishiki and Shiro Uzaki. Yes, Uzaki's the artist. I should have known that. Act Age, all those other series. But just a way to, like, damn, it's such a clever idea. And, like, of course, the whole idea that, like, Osamu Nishiki also writes Iruma-kun, like, Welcome to School Iruma-kun. It makes me really interested in, like, how similar these two series are. Because, like, I know the Iruma-kun's also, like, a magic-based series in a way. So just seeing how all of this comes together really makes me, reading Ichi the Witch, I want to read that now, right? If that sort of makes sense at the end of the day. But either way, eventually Ichi's like, wow, a broom, that's pretty cool. But as all of this happens, Jiki Shiron busts into the room, and everybody's like, hey, what are you doing here, Jiki Shiron? And she just explains that Team Desscaras has just been assigned their next hunt, and that Jiki Shiron is tagging along. And everybody's like, whoa, that's absolutely crazy, right? As we get a little flashback to a few days ago, whenever Jiki Shiron entered back into Monogold's office being like, hey, so you're telling me that you want to accompany, like, Ichi on his next mission? And Jiki Shiron's like, yep. And she pretty much, like, pulls out this fake prophecy, as she explains, and hands it over to Monogold. And the prophecy just reads like, hey, go with the light, and you may find a fragment of the future in which you search. And we sort of understand that while Jiki Shiron doesn't really care about going on this mission, she just needs to see for herself whether or not Ichi the Witch is truly a messiah who can stand up against a world hater. And then, once that time comes, she has to decide which side of the war she'll take. Will she stay on the side of the witches, or join the world hater to ensure that her and her beloved can remain safe? It's just a very interesting thing pretty much being set up here. And along that, we get set up for the next arc, as we just understand that Ichi and the gang have to go now to the Pendulum Seas, as we just get some narration explaining. There is a class of legendary magics that witches have attempted and failed to acquire for ages. Amongst them, there's one that the Witches Association would pay almost any price to acquire. The Time Magic. Its lair can be found on the Pendulum Seas. That cursed stretch of water has sent many a ship to the cold depths, and within it drifted a creepy cradle of death. The ghost ship known as Chronostasis. As we just cut to, hey, the entire gang is here, pretty much, right? And of course, we see that Gokuraku, Jiki Shiron, and Ichi are all on a magic hoverboard, and we see that Desscaras is on one as well, with Kumugi pretty much riding, sitting on it behind her. As we just see, oh, there's this ship on the Pendulum Seas, like, a great naming convention there. I absolutely love it. And oh yeah, Chronostasis, like, oh my gosh, I'm just so excited for this next arc of Ichi the Witch, and there's just so much set up here, and I just really can't wait to see what happens. As normal, great chapter of Ichi the Witch, but with the main takeaway of, like, man, I just love how technology and magic are coexisting in this world. And hey, perfect segue. If we want to talk about coexistence, then let's talk about Ruri Dragon, chapter number 38 next. This chapter is titled, Better Have One Than Not. As, of course, we ended the last chapter of Ruri Dragon, of Ruri pretty much being like, hey class, dragons are going to destroy the world, pretty much. And everybody's like, I'm sorry, excuse me, right? But we started off this chapter of Ruri Dragon with a little bit of a different scene, as this is right after Ruri grew her horns and then breathed fire in class that one day. As we see that she's just sitting down and talking with her mother over dinner, and her mother starts to explain the entire dragon story and all of this various stuff. And eventually Ruri's like, hey, I don't need to know all of this pretty much right now, and, like, we'll put a pin in that. Whenever I need to know it, we'll talk about it later. How does that sound, pretty much, right? And eventually her mother agrees and just says, like, hey, just remember, we've got to talk about this at some point. You can't deny it pretty much for your entire life. But eventually, getting into all of the classroom stuff, Ruri just explains, like, hey, well, dragons are going to destroy the whole world, but that said, because they can destroy the world doesn't mean they're necessarily going to destroy the world. Or at least that's not their intent, because, like, sort of I was bored, and sort of being like, maybe humans aren't so bad after all, pretty much, right? And we see that Ruri just gets ready to explain all of this to her class, and, like, she obviously doesn't have this fully planned out, and is obviously a little nervous about doing all of this. She's like, well, like, strictly speaking, I shouldn't exist, but, like, dragon and reproduce, and, like, I don't really need to get into any of that, pretty much, right? And eventually, Ruri just gets to the whole thing again, like, hey, just because I am a dragon and want to try to live as one, doesn't mean I want you guys to treat me any differently, pretty much, right? And everybody's like, yeah, it's dragons, so cool, right? Well, that really happens at the end of the chapter. But either way, Ruri just says, like, hey, the thing is, it doesn't seem like I have that power to destroy the world. However, I definitely inherited a fraction of that power. And just to say, like, hey, I've got the blood of world busters within me, but even so, that's not all I am, okay? So I just like to take this moment to reintroduce myself as a dragon, and I hope you don't mind having me around. And everybody's like, whoa, that's neat, right? And at this point, we now move on to arguably my favorite, like, part of manga this week, as we see that Ruri is just talking with her teacher, Shindo, in sort of, like, the teacher's classroom, pretty much, right? And we see that Ruri and Shindo are really just talking about the events of class that day, until eventually Shindo just says, like, hey, oh, also, there's been some progress on my end, too. I was already planning on having this chat for you today, so let me fill you in on your categorization. It just says, like, hey, so far, Ruri, we've been calling you a demi-human. However, I've been waiting to establish a formal designation for you, pretty much, right? And, like, hey, and now it's officially been decided. And Ruri's like, oh, a designation? Like, what does that mean? As pretty much Shindo just explains, like, hey, it's really better to have a designation than not to have one. It could really make the rest of your life just a little bit easier and just run a little bit more smoothly, pretty much. And she's like, so wait, you're telling say like there's other things classified the same way I am? And he's like, no, like you were the only one on our radar, Akoi. And she's like, so then like really, what does it matter? As we see, Shindo pulls out a piece of paper and hands it over to her, just saying like, hey, it's possible that others like you will come about in the future as long as dragons still exist. So really just think about this as a way to prepare for that. And here you go. That is your designation. As we just see that the designation is titled, Regarding the Double, Tentative Designation. This type of human hybrid will herefore be described in the above stated manner, and designation will be furthermore used as a general term in the event that similar individuals are identified, right? As pretty much we now understand that Ruri is something called a double, pretty much, right? And she just explains like, hey, well, you're sort of double number one, but also like double number zero at the same time, pretty much. Like, hey, either way, it's pretty neat, right? You're classified as a double, right? And she's just like, oh my gosh, like that's actually so cool and awesome, right? As he's like, hey, there's really no deeper meaning to the name itself. We just thought it should be like pretty easy. Like, but you're not quite human and you're not quite dragon up to this point. So at least this way you can put a name on what you are pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, I hope that provides some level of comfort. And Ruri's like, oh my gosh, like heck yeah, that's awesome, right? And just talking about the name of Double here, I love how Shindo says, like, there's no deeper meaning to it, but going through and reading the comments on Viz.com after reading this chapter, there was one that really resonated with me, as the whole idea of, like, in typical fantasy worlds, whenever somebody is, like, half dragon, half human, like, they'd be called, like, a half dragon, or, like, even, like, in, like, general fantasy, like, oh, you're a half orc, you're a half elf, like, you're a dragonborn, or something like that. And the way that implies it is that you're not one whole of anything, pretty much. Like, you're half of this, you're half of that, and those make one whole together. But the wording of double sort of turns that on its head. Yes, you are a human, but you're also a dragon. You are two wholes that come together to make a new whole. You're a double. And it's just something about that wording of not half dragon, not you're something this, you're something that. You're a double. You're Ruri. Like, you're a human, but you're also a dragon. There's just something beautiful about that wording to me. And again, just the way that Shindo just says, like, hey, there's no deeper meaning to the name itself, it really just resonates that, like, yes, there actually is a whole lot of a deeper meaning to it. And even if we're not meant to look into that deeper meaning of the name, it's still there, and it's still beautiful at the end of the day. But again, moving on, at this point, Ruri just gets back to class, and everybody's talking with her like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And of course, one of the main boys in her class, the boy whose hair that she nearly burned off there at the beginning of the series, turns around. I should really know this kid's name, but I really don't, right? And eventually, he's just asking, like, hey, are you going to tell us more stuff about all of your dragon things, pretty much, right? Like, hey, if you feel forced to talk about it, like, that's a different story. But if you want to tell us about it, we're not going to be complaining, right? And she's like, well, it's not that interesting. And he's like, what? Like, are you kidding me? Dudes are all about dragons. And don't doubt me for a minute. Everybody in this room wants to hear the full scoop pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, my showcase in elementary school had a dragon on it. Like, dragons are just, like, so absolutely cool pretty much, right? And he's just like, hey, so the second you want to tell us more, all of us in this room, we are more than willing to listen pretty much. And Drew's like, oh, then, like, let's just do it right now then. Like, I've got even more unrevealed dragon tidbits. And everybody's like, oh, let's go. And Rui's like, okay then. And she just pulls out of her backpack a dragon notebook pretty much. Just says notes about dragons. She's like, hey, well, let's start off here. There are many different types of dragons. And somebody in the class is like, a whole notebook? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it, right? And that's where we end this chapter of Ruri Dragon. Just a really beautiful one, and I know, like, there's no reason for me to look into the deeper meaning of the name Double, but something about it just, I don't know what else to say. It's just perfect for what Ruri Dragon is trying to convey as a series, and yeah, I love this manga, man. Like, I'm so happy that the author and the artists are like aired. I think it's just one guy. What is this? Makoshi Shindo, I think, is who writes this series. Masaoki Shindo. It's just one person. I'm glad that, like, they're able to keep on writing this brilliant manga because, like, as long as they're writing it, I'm gonna be here to talk about it pretty much, right? Ruri Dragon, great chapter this week. And gosh, we just had bangers this week, like banger after banger after banger, because next up is Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, chapter number 3. This chapter is titled Swimming Through the Forest. We pretty much start off this chapter learning that, like, oh my gosh, guys, well, we're now heading to this place called Gifu Prefecture. It is a locked prefecture in the land of Japan, and oh my gosh, we have to take down this shark that swims through forest. Dun dun da 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 dun. And the thing about this chapter of Modulo is that it really focuses on both Tsurugi and Maru really overcoming all of their various differences. Like normal, this is a very, like, dense chapter of Modulo, but there's a lot of really good and awesome things that happen in it, right? But of course, as I was mentioning a second ago, they're all heading to Gifu Prefecture to search down for this, like, oh, there's this cursed shark pretty much out there. What's going on there? And Tsurugi, of course, reminds the audience, like, hey, really no curses really should happen outside of the inhuman Mayako in Tokyo, pretty much. So this is really weird. Like, why is there something going on out here? And we also learned, like, hey, this shark has apparently killed somebody here in this remote town, pretty much, right? And as they sort of get there, Yuka splits off from the group to go, like, talk to people, get eyewitness accounts, try to figure out this greater mystery. And of course, this leaves Maru and Tsurugi alone to sort of have to settle out their differences. And of course, they get into this big, like, argument, and, like, the whole idea is just Tsurugi's being like, hey, why didn't you use your power to save that kid back there in the very first chapter, pretty much? And Maru doesn't really get to explain himself very much. Is like, hey, like, if you got this powerful sorcery, why aren't you using it? But eventually, this sort of just gets ruined by the fact that as they're sort of just, like, standing there, a massive, like, ultra-realistic shark just swims by them. And of course, Tsurugi, I just love how both Tsurugi and Maru are just like, what is that, pretty much, right? As you just see that Tsurugi gets ready to use his katana, but Maru just, like, has to stop me, like, hey, your katana produces, like, flames and stuff, like, you can't do that, pretty much. And I just love this panel down here in the corner of page 4 where he's just like, or in the corner of page 7, my bad, where both of them are like, oh yeah, good point. Like, it's drawn in just a very, like, funny, artistic style. But eventually, because, like, oh my gosh, this is this shark that they are, like, searching after, Maru runs and jumps onto it, trying to do something to slow this shark down. And he's like, hey, if you can't attack right now using your fire ability, then, like, we need to do something else, right? And of course, as this happens, Maru's, like, holding on to it. A voice comes from underneath the shark, as we just see, oh, there's a human face here, and this guy is like, oh, I haven't seen you kids around here before. As both Maru and Tsurugi are like, it's an old guy, right? And we just understand that this is a Jujutsu sorcerer by the name of Osada. He actually went to Jujutsu High a long time ago and now lives out here in the mountains, pretty much, right? And pretty much he just explains, like, hey, I am not the thing that's been eating people. It's actually a man-eating tiger which has appeared around here, right? That tiger's name is Toranosuke, and I've been chasing after him, pretty much, right? And of course, there's the bigger question. There's a wild tiger in Japan. And pretty much we get, like, the whole lore drop here of, like, hey, over a quarter century ago, a pair of tigers was brought here by an illegal foreign traders and made this mountain their home. And the tiger who's currently attacking the land now is their grandkid. It's a product of inbreeding, pretty much, right? And Osada just explains, like, hey, he's been a really smart tiger ever since he was young, and even though we can't speak the same language, the two of us always knew what was going through the other one's brain, pretty much, right? But recently, this mountain has been taken over by a solar plant, which has wiped out all of the really big ecosystem, right? And because of that, the river locally dried up, and the tiger is now currently just looking for some water. And of course, with that comes food, which is why he ended up and offed one of the villagers, pretty much, right? And pretty much Maru and Tsurugi understand, so what the villager saw of a shark was you actually taking down these people, pretty much, right? And Osada's like, yes, pretty much. As pretty much he just explains, like, hey, my curse technique pretty much allows me to draw out the powers of whatever I wear, pretty much, right? So, of course, if he wears a shark costume, he can mimic a shark, pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, I don't necessarily blame the villagers for getting the wrong idea there, pretty much, right? But either way, Osada just explains, like, hey, but either way, I don't want Toranosuke to die. I want to save that tiger. And of course, Tsurugi brings the whole idea, but, like, that tiger already killed somebody, so, like, we need to put it down before it happens again, pretty much. Like, now that it has a taste for humans, you can't tell us that it's not going to hurt somebody again in the future, pretty much, right? And of course, there's just a little bit of a debate that happens there. So Osada just goes like, hey, but I live in this cabin, like, over in the mountains. Like, if the two of us live there our entire lives, it's not going to be near any villagers. It won't be a problem. But Tsurugi's like, no, that obviously can't happen. And of course, Osada brings up the whole idea, we just need to coexist together, pretty much. And of course, this resonates with Maru, the alien. But of course, as all of this happens, eventually Osada's like, oh, I smell him. Of course, he's a shark. He can smell very good, pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, this nose is made for smelling blood. And he finds Toranosuke hiding up in a tree, pretty much, right? And of course, Osada doesn't really know this, and Toranosuke comes down and, like, draws these claws into Osada's body, really hurting him very well, pretty much, right? And of course, Tsurugi and Maru come in to help the day, right? As it's just this whole idea of this really big tiger in front of him, and Tsurugi has to take it down because Osada can't really do anything, and Maru can't necessarily use his abilities either, right? As we just get a minor little flashback of course, whenever Osada was young, living up in these mountains, of course, he knew of these tigers and met the young Toranosuke, pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, little fella, like, you're all alone here, well, I'm all alone too, but it ain't bad being alone. It'll just make you stronger, but if you're ever in real trouble, you can come to my place anytime. And we just see later on in life, after Osada had lived his entire career, pretty much, there's a tiger paw that came by his house, and we just see the whole idea of him being like, since you came back to see me, I thought that maybe, just maybe, but looking at those eyes now, I know, the one I knew back then, he's gone, and there's no getting through to you now, is there? As he is just crying here in the moment, like, Tsurugi, just don't let him suffer, like, I'm begging you, as tears are just pooling out of his face. He's like, I'm sorry, Toranosuke, I'm sorry. As Tsurugi goes through, draws his sword, as we just cut to later in the day. as we see the blood of a tiger is spilled on the ground. And Maru and, of course, Tsurugi along with Osada are all sitting there very quietly. And we just get this whole idea as Osada's like, hey, I'm really sorry I made you take on such a terrible task, pretty much, right? But Tsurugi's like, no, it's my job. It's pretty much what goes on here. And he's like, man, you are a true Jujutsu sorcerer. And eventually Tsurugi goes over to talk with Maru. And Maru pretty much devolves a little bit about his life, pretty much, right? Just saying like, hey, my job with my alien race is to gather enough information on whether or not we can coexist with the humans here. My curse technique is shared with my younger twin brother, so I'm forbidden to use it except for only emergencies. And of course, here in a moment, Tsurugi's like, twin brother, that's who I saw last chapter who wouldn't talk to me, pretty much, right? As it's just this whole idea where Maru says like, hey, my brother can tell whether or not I use a lot of my cursed energy, so if it ever gets to a point where I have to use my power, it would only make him trust the Earthlings less, pretty much. So that's why I hesitated to use it before, right? And it's this whole idea where Tsurugi's like, I'm sorry to make you divulge all of that. And he's like, no, I feel bad. Like, I wanted to save that child's life, but I just necessarily couldn't do it, right? And pretty much we just get this whole idea. This is also top secret information. Tsurugi's like, then why'd you tell me? And Maru's like, well, I just want to be your friend, man. And of course, with all of that there, oh, there's some little bit of wrestling over in some of the leaves. And oh my gosh, there's a baby tiger, pretty much, right? And as this happens, we see that Tsurugi walks towards it, hand on his sword, pretty much, right? And Maru's like, Tsurugi, like, wait, what are you doing? As we just see Osada run around a corner, as Tsurugi just holds up the cub by the scruff of its neck and just holds it to him, and like, hey, Osada, don't take your eyes off of this one, as he just tosses it over to him, and Osada just hugs this little tiger cub in his arms, and Maru's like, hey, like, are you sure about this? And Tsurugi's like, hey, no, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody knows how that cub will turn out. It's the same as the rest of us. And Maru just gives a smile like, you're right, man. And that's where we end this chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, chapter number 3. This chapter just has something special about it. The way that, like, oh yeah, this isn't a happy ending for this tiger. It goes through, it kills people. It's not a good animal. And the way that we just cut from Tsurugi having to cut it down into sadness, you're like, man, that sucks. Like, I feel really bad for this Osada guy. Then moving into the whole idea of like, oh, no, wait a second. With every tragedy, there's hope on the other side of the corner, pretty much. Damn, this was just such a good chapter. I just loved getting more characterization on Tsurugi and not only Maru, and like, I feel like I enjoy these two characters so much more now. Even like I love Osada. I love this guy's power. I love his story. Like, oh my gosh, like this is just a really good chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. Like, legitimately not much else for me to say about it, pretty much, right? But with that, next up is Someone Hertz, chapter number 2. Of course, we have a color page. This chapter is titled, You Are Funny. Now, I'm going to be speeding through this chapter a little bit because it's really just about like, oh my gosh, like, hey, of course, our main character is a guy by the name of Mime Fukamori, right? And of course, his sort of like love interest, as we sort of like get into, like, of course, is going to be like a rom-com, like that's sort of how it works. But also, one of his best friends at school is a girl named Kugari Mizuo, right? So, of course, Mizuo and Mime, right? Well, this chapter, I've got to admit, I laughed at a few of the jokes that sort of like came through and happened there. As like the first joke, as soon as we open up the chapter, is just Mime being like, "Oh, hey, good morning, Mizuo," and she's just like, "Oh, morning, Mime. Like, how's the student council going? Like, are you going think you're going to make nationals?" And it's just a stupid joke. Like, yeah, of course you're not going to make nationals for student council, but it just got a rise out of me. It's like, what can I say, right? But of course, we just understand, like, hey, this is El Potato. And Mime is like, man, I really wonder what El Potato does during her general day. And, like, so this pretty much leads to him going around and following around Mizuo for the entire day. And we just see, like, yeah, she just loves comedy. She makes these stupid little jokes that nobody else gets, pretty much. But she still has a great time doing it, right? Eventually getting to this idea at the end of the day where Mime is also looking for a goal for himself. Like, he wants to set himself a goal in the world of comedy, pretty much, right? And eventually just gets to the whole point where it's like, hey, there's this whole idea of the listener quotient, pretty much, on the Monday midnight talk show that they all listen to. There's this whole idea of like, yeah, whoever gets their things read the most, well, the top 10 of them all pretty much get to go at each other and who's the funniest, pretty much, right? It's like the regular comedy quotient, the Wara1 quotient that happens in Japan. I act like I know what I'm talking about. I read the manga Shohasho, and so like that's sort of how it goes, right? But pretty much there's this whole idea where Mizo's like, I'm going to do that, or Mime says, I'm going to do it, and Mizo's like, then yeah, if you're going to do it, then I'm seriously going to try to win the listener quotient as well. The two of us will be facing off, right? And it's just a really cute chapter. I understand why the Japanese audience is really taking to this series so much, and I'll be interested to read the next chapter. I don't know if I'm going to drop it yet or not, or at least like just put it on hold for a while, but like I legitimately loved what I read in this chapter somewhat hurts, and for a manga that didn't make me laugh at all in the first chapter, the amount of times that I just chuckled at random jokes in this chapter is like, come on now, it's actually sort of funny. I mean, not really to delve more into this chapter, but there is a part like halfway through, whenever she's like talking with all of her various friends pretty much, right? And it's very early in chapter. Where is it? I'm trying to find it. And pretty much they're just talking about like, hey, do you do anything like on your free time, like your own social media, Mizuo? And she's like, oh, I mean, I'm on there a little bit. Like recently I've been drawing it, circulator art, and uploading it to X pretty much, right? Of course, Twitter, as I like to call it. And the two girls like, wait, you can draw? As, of course, like the whole joke goes over their head as Mime is like, wait a second, no, circular art, like circulator, like she's talking about fan art. Like, oh my God, what is she doing? Like, it took me a while to get it, but it's honestly just a little bit of a funny thing in my opinion. So yeah, just good chapter of Someone Hurts. I'll definitely be interested to see what happens next chapter, but like definitely not on the level as like Ruri Dragon or Modulo this week, but just like a good chapter of manga. Next up is Harukaze Mound, chapter number 14. And as much as I want to talk about this chapter, I don't know what to say about it. And I really think that's my issue of not knowing how sports are played. Because, like, in the past, whenever Weekly Shonen Jump didn't have, like, harsh deadlines, like, you could sit down and explain to your audience, like, oh, this is how you play baseball, or, oh, this is how you play soccer, or football, or any of these other various sports. And the problem with Weekly Shonen Jump now is that, like, everything is, like, so high, like, fast-paced and all this various stuff, that me not knowing how the sport of baseball works really, lowers my sense of enjoyment in Harukaze Mound, because, like, the whole idea of this chapter is that Keigo is feeling down. I'm pretty sure this chapter is titled, chapter number 14, Dark Guy, or something like that. Yeah, it's called Dark Guy, as pretty much that's what Nagiharu calls Keigo at some point during the chapter, after Keigo is really just feeling down himself, and eventually just getting to the whole idea at the very end of the chapter of Nagiharu being like, hey, I think that we can change the course of this game, pretty much, right? And it's just like, I have to say, like, it's a good message this chapter has, but there's just something that feels like a little bit disjointed about it to me, and I think it's not only because we're cutting so much throughout this game just to see all these events that happen, eventually leading up to, like, hey, here Kingo's finally going to get to bat and do it pretty much how he should, right? But also at the same time, it's just like, I don't know much about baseball. It's a good chapter of Harukaze Mound, and I like the message that we get here, but just like I mentioned, me not knowing what I'm talking about sort of is like, oh, great, yeah, let's do it then. But Harukaze Mound wasn't a bad chapter. Like, legitimately, I don't think we had a bad chapter of Shonen Jump at all this week, right? But that's really all I gotta say about Harukaze Mound. I know it's not big and interesting, but yeah, it just was a good chapter at the end of the day, and not really too much else to say about it. And man, like, that's sort of how I feel about the next one, Ekiden Bros, chapter number 12. This chapter is titled The Glass Prodigy. That's a badass title for somebody, right? But of course, the character who they are talking about is none other than Hanashiro. Of course, this is like sort of one of the other rival characters in Odani's like Ekiden running team pretty much, right? And like, oh man, this guy doesn't really talk to anybody, right? But this chapter is pretty much all about his various story pretty much, right? As it really takes a while to come into fruition, as like, oh man, we see the Ekidens being run, we see the guy who's running like the fifth leg for Sakodu University, is this guy named by like Shin Onokui. Oh man, he's a runner that gets really nervous about running pretty much, right? And like, oh, we don't really learn anything else about his character, but it gets made up. We learn a whole lot about Hanashiro here, right? But we just understand, like, hey, there's this, like, discrepancy, like, oh, man, Odani's currently, like, 6th place, but, like, Sakotsu's in 1st. Like, oh, how are they going to balance that stuff out pretty much so Nobunaga can run up against his brother? What was his brother's name? Like, Murohide or something like that? I don't really know, right? I honestly sort of just forget. Like, it's also been, like, 3 weeks since I read the last chapter of the series, so, like, yeah, right? But either way, we just see the coaches, like, talking with all of these various people, like, hey, there's still hope for us yet. I mean, Hanashiro's pretty much going on there, right? And eventually, like, hey, like, why, coach, did you even pick up Hanashiro? And he's just like, oh, well, pretty much his running time. That's exactly why I picked him up, right? And he's like, hey, he's the only incoming freshman this year who I picked solely based on time. As we also see the student manager for the team, right? She explains, like, hey, back when I was managing back in high school, he set new records for student races 3 times. This is the whole idea is like, oh my gosh, this girl, I think her name's like Reen or something like that. I'm going to call her Reen, and if her name isn't Reen, then oops, Glowplasma L right there, right? But pretty much we just get the whole idea of, like, hey, in high school, pretty much Hanashiro couldn't enter that many races, and that's because the way he ran was a double-edged sword. Pretty much he would make these very long strides, and that pretty much tired him out very easily, eventually leading him to develop his new running style, where he runs with a really high step count, right? Reen explains, like, hey, until high school, his strength was in his long stride, but at one point he kept getting hurt and he could barely run at all for a while. So he came up with this new technique where he uses short strides, softening his impact on the ground, but he also has to move his legs a whole lot more than before, pretty much, right? As there's this whole idea of, like, the other girl in the car, her name is earlier in this chapter, she is the team coordinator, her name is Higure. She's like, hey, so you're saying, like, the reason he is, like, such a lone wolf is, like, because he got hurt a lot back then, and Reen just explains, like, hey, he doesn't want to talk about that, but that is why he's sort of, like, a lone wolf, right? As we also just get a look to back whenever these two were in high school, right? Of course, Hanashiro and Reen. As pretty much, Hanashiro just says, like, hey, I'll run in anything but an Ekiden. I mean, if I got hurt right in the middle of it, then I couldn't pass on the sash, and where would the rest of the team be? Like, I really, really don't want to do it. Someone who doesn't believe they can pass that sash no matter what has no business putting it on in the first place. But of course, here in a moment, Hanashiro is running in the Ekiden, right? As of course, hey, he's running through it as he's just thinking, like, hey, I'm going to pass this on no matter what. I will. As we see the end of the 5th stage of the Oga Ekiden, as both Hanashiro and Sakoto University's 5th leg of the race, the two of them both put the sash together at the same time. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, they did it. They cut up the Sakoto. That's crazy. Like, oh my gosh, Udani is insane, right? As we just see Reen look outside the window of the van that pulls up and just is like, hey, Hanashiro, like, look, good job. Like, you ran an Ekiden. And he's like, yeah, I did. And that's where we end this chapter of Ekiden Bros. Like, I didn't expect to have a character moment that I would resonate with so much in this chapter, but, like, damn, like, it sort of just happened. Like, Ekiden Bros had a good chapter. I like Hanashiro's character now. Like, I want to see how I'm invested of him for, like, the last, 5 chapters? I'm pretty sure the series got canceled at chapter 17, being that I'm, like, 7 weeks behind, so, like, I take it this is probably all we're going to get from Hanashiro, but I'm just excited to see whatever character gets built up next in this series, because, like, so far it seems like, yeah, Ekiden Bros, who is the manga for this series? Let me go find it real quick. I don't know this person by heart yet. By Daiki Nono. It seems like their big strength is in character writing, so giving us this character writing, I'm going to be excited to see it for the next few chapters before it inevitably ends, pretty much, right? And then we've got another series that I know is going to inevitably end soon, and that's Ping Pong Peril. We're talking about chapter number 11, titled Date in Shibuya, right? Pretty much to rush through this chapter because there's not really too much to talk about. Wow, Tiara is going on a pseudo date with his sponsor, Mitsuki, in Shibuya, pretty much, right? Of course, the entire time, he's just like, man, we could be playing Ping Pong Peril at any time, eventually, till he just relaxes and just thinks like, hey, I'm just going to have a good time, pretty much. Him and Mitsuki are pretty much hanging out. Do we know how old Mitsuki is? I think she's like 20 or something. Tiara's like 15. Slightly weird, but whatever. I'll ignore it for funny ping pong, right? But pretty much they're walking through the big crossroads at Shibuya, of course, the big famous intersection. And of course, as they're walking by it, we see that, Tiara runs into somebody he knows. This guy is somebody by the name of Pari Hezibuzika, pretty much, right? Or Pari Hebizuka, that's what his name is, right? Eventually just getting into the whole idea of like, oh my gosh, hey, I know you pretty much. Of course, as he's like, hey, Hezibuka, it's been a very long time. Mitsuki just says, let's play Ping Pong Peril, right? And Tiara's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I even love like how on the panel, this is page number 14, we see Tiara's mouth is like drawn, like his face is like cut off by the side of the panel, but his mouth just like keeps on going with that very nervous, like, oh my gosh, what's going on here, right? It's a little bit of a weird artistic thing I just realized, but sure, I put it into my Shonen Jump manga, right? But pretty much there's this whole idea where Tiara just thinks like, hey, this is bad. Me and Perry played a lot in middle school, but I never won, not even once. And on top of that, it feels like Perry's never really taken me seriously. Like, hey, I'm sorry, but this is just on a completely different level from all of the matches I've played so far. This is serious business. As we understand, like, hey, Tiara and Perry are going to be, or Pari, I'm sorry, his name's Pari. They're going to be playing here at the Shuba Scramble Crossing, pretty much. And the ping pong table is the pedestrians' heads. And Tiara's like, what the fuck's going on here, pretty much, right? As there's also one more special rule, pretty much like the second bounce off of each head pretty much has to happen on the head of somebody who's in a different block than the one that you're on, pretty much, right? Of course, the 4 blocks of the crossing here, sure, whatever. I'll see how that works into the ping pong match, right? As Pari just is like, no, I don't need anything besides his 5 million. See, this is sort of like a declaration for me. As Pari just says, I'm going to bet the 986 million that I've earned through both playing Ping Pong and Ping Pong Peril. As both Mitsuki and Tiara's like, what the hell is going on here right now? Tiara's like, you're so confident, man, right? But Pari just wins like, hey, you don't need to worry, Tiara. I'll win without any trouble. But I want you to understand something. To me, this single victory would be worth it, pretty much, right? And like, I'm very interested in what the relationship between Pari and Tiara is, because like we really don't get much in this chapter besides like millions of yen are on the line, pretty much, right? But either way, Tiara's just thinking like, hey, like what is he going on about? Like that's crazy. Like, is it even possible for me to win against Coach Pari? But like, hey, no, I shouldn't think that way. And he's like, hey, I understand. I'm going to win this match of Ping Pong Peril. And that's where we end this chapter number 11. It was a good chapter. Honestly, a little bit underwhelming of all things. It's like, we have a new ping pong match starting, and like the heads of people in Shibuya. Who gets the ideas for these things? Is the author? Who's the author of this series? I feel like I'm mentioning all of the authors this video, right? But the author of this series, what's his name? Yoshiharu Kadoda. Is he just like walking around being like, man, Shibuya Crossing, what if I like played ping pong on the people? It's like, this series is just like a very deep, intrusive thought. Like that's legitimately what Ping Pong Peril is, right? But Ping Pong Peril had a decent enough chapter. Definitely not my favorite, but also like, I can't complain. It's building up the story to hopefully something absolutely amazing, right? But with Ping Pong Peril out of the way, next up is Hima-Ten, chapter number 59. This chapter is titled Heartwarming Memories. And yeah, guys, I like the series also known as Nisekoi, another harem manga that ran a long time ago in Weekly Shonen Jump. It's actually sort of crazy that Nisekoi has almost been over for 10 years. I say this as a guy who read Nisekoi a very long time ago, and for a portion of time in my life said, yeah, Nisekoi is one of my favorite manga of all time. I definitely think Nisekoi is still like top 5 for me probably, but like definitely not like the number 1 spot anymore, right? But this honestly reminds me why I bring up Nisekoi. This chapter really reminds me of a chapter of Nisekoi wherever Raku and Onodera go back to their high school and really just reminisce on how they first met. As of course, what happens in this chapter is, would you look at that? Kanai and Iamori also go back to their middle school and pretty much reminisce about how they first met, right? It's honestly just a really nice chapter going through. There's the teacher at this school that's pretty much getting both married and retiring, and there's this really funny ley line throughout the entire chapter where she's like, oh, I love when former student couples come and see me pretty much, and two of them like, we're not dating, but she's like, what do you mean? Like, didn't you both come talk to me about your counseling pretty much? As we just get the whole idea of like they're into counseling, Honoka came up to her being like, hey, is Iamori applying to, like, May High? And, of course, we see that Iamori did the same thing, like, man, well, I was just thinking, like, I want to get into May High, but, like, if all the people, like, smart students, like, can I apply? Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get in, pretty much. And both of them are like, we never did that. We had completely normal sessions with you, pretty much. And, of course, the whole idea of, like, hey, whenever you go on field trips in Japan, they take all the photos, and then you buy the photos afterwards. And, oh, man, both Kanai and Iamori, both paw only the pictures that both of them were in, pretty much, right? And I love how we see they both have the same thought of, like, I only bought the pictures that we were in. Like, did Miss Sahara, like, actually notice all the way back then? But either way, the two of them just get into the classroom and start reminiscing about their life. Like, I used to sit in this seat. Oh, yeah, I sat over there in the corner. And Kanai's like, yeah, I'd always sit here right in front of the boards. Whenever the people didn't actually clean it, I'd be the one to clean it pretty much, right? And with that, they just get, like, reminded to how both of them met cleaning that singular whiteboard, right? And we see Amor's cleaning it, and he's like, oh, thanks, Kanai, like, thanks for helping me out. And she's like, oh, for cleaning the whiteboard, like, don't mention it, like, I was just on duty today, pretty much, right? But she's like, hey, I should be the one thanking you, you're always cleaning it for us, right? And Amor's like, hey, I can't really help, but I'm good at this stuff. And she's like, oh, cleaning blackboards? And he's like, no, I actually do, like, a lot of housework back home, and, like, cleaning is, like, second nature to me, pretty much, right? And he was like, I mean, but also, like, the way you erase the board is honestly really beautiful, Kanai. And Kanai's sort of, like, taken aback by that. And she's like, but, like, you're also good at cleaning the whiteboard too, Iamori, right? Like, it's always spotless after you do it. And he's like, hey, I'm just good at cleaning, that's it. Like, you do it, like, very beautifully, pretty much. And pretty much the two of them just sit there, like, not acting like they don't remember how it initially started, right? But eventually Kanai's like, yeah, I mean, I'm the first one who really realized everything you do, Iamori. As Iamori just reacts like, me? Like, what are you talking about? As Kanai just explains like, hey, you do so much for all of these other people, and plus, you're a thoughtful and hard worker, and I also, like, realized that your house cleaning was, like, your big secret, pretty much, right? And Iamori's like, hey, but it's not, like, that big of a deal, like, are you upset or something, Kanai? As Kanai just says, like, no, I'm not upset at you. I just didn't want you to think that I don't remember anything that happened back there, like, I've always been paying attention. As Kanai just thinks to herself, being like, man, he hasn't figured out my feelings. He hasn't felt that I've loved him so much this entire time. As at the same time, Kanai just says out loud, honestly, I felt really frustrated lately, and I just want to get to know you better, Iamori. And she's like, hey, but I just feel like we're not getting any closer. And Iamori's like, oh, Kanai. At this point, the teacher walks into the room, sort of breaking the two of them up as they both sort of go off on their separate ways and head home. And Iamori, on his way home, is like, I really messed up. What am I doing here? I hope I didn't, like, hurt Kanai's feelings, right, or anything. But eventually, Iamori sort of has to go on his way out to clean a house, pretty much, doing all this various stuff. And eventually, as he's walking back home, he's just thinking, like, man, like, she's honestly so right. I'm so, like, direct around Yoshino, but, like, I'm so reserved around Kanai. And he's like, man, what am I doing here? And he's like, have I really been hurting her feelings by just putting her on a pedestal, pretty much? As eventually Iamori rounds the corner to his apartment, and look who's standing outside. It is none other than Miss Himanono. And she's like, oh, hey, welcome home, Tanichi. And he's like, what are you doing now here, Miss Himano, right? And she's like, hey, well, I knew I made the right decision becoming the teacher thanks to you two, pretty much. And he's like, what are you talking? She's like, hey, Kanai's inside my place. You want to come in? And Iamori's like, what? And yeah, that's where we end Hima-Ten this week. This chapter was great until Himanono said, like, hey, I'm glad to be a teacher because of you two. I don't know what's going to happen next chapter. I'll be very interested to see what does occur out of all of this, but, like, all the stuff with Iamori and Kanai in the school reminds me of that one chapter of Nizukoe with Onodera and Raku, so, like, yeah, good chapter of manga, you know what I'm saying? I don't have too much else to say about it. Hima-Ten was, like, pretty fine this week. Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi chapter number 61 is up next. And really, this chapter just gets to the whole point of, I honestly forgot how funny this chapter was in its progression pretty much, right? But hey, Kiyoshi Harai is fully healed up, like he's no longer got any issues pretty much going on here. His preset power is all back pretty much. And of course, this means that he has to leave the Hitsugi household pretty much, and that he can no longer be staying with any of them, right? But pretty much it just gets to the whole idea of Kyosuke just saying like, hey, thank you for staying here with us. And Kyoshi's like, no, like, thank you for letting me stay with you guys for like so long, right? And all the children are like, hey, Kiyoshi, when will you be back pretty much, right? Like, don't go, right? But either way, Kyosuke, of course, Sosuke's father, just tells him like, hey, you might be able to use your preset power again, but you're still a long way off from a full recovery. So please don't forget what you promised me. And Kyoshi's like, hey, I won't, I swear. I think what he promised him was just like the whole idea of like, don't go and get into like any of these big fights, and like don't like fully fight in any major battles. Like, you can train, but not that. If there was something else, I obviously missed it and don't remember, right? But either way, Kyoshi's like, hey, I swear I won't do any of that. Like, don't worry, pretty much, right? As Kyosuke just says like, hey, once you're fully recovered, your preset power will be stronger than ever, and you will reach even greater heights, Kiyoshi. And he's like, yes, sir. Like, thank you very much, right? But eventually as Kiyoshi's getting ready to leave, he's like, hey, I was really happy staying with you all here. Like, again, thank you. You guys really treated me like family. As Kyosuke just gives him a big hug, saying like, hey, come back anytime, Kiyoshi. Our home is your home. And just a really sweet sentiment there, right? But of course, as Kiyoshi's getting ready to leave, everybody's like, wait, where's the young master? Where's Sosuke? As of course, Sosuke is just sitting up on a pillar. Gosh, this is so funny. He's sitting up on a pillar here on the house. He's like, hey, it's not like this is goodbye forever, right? And everybody's like, hey, but we just have to say goodbye, right? But Sosuke's like, hey, next time we meet, it'll be on an even higher stage, Kiyoshi. I'm not gonna lose. And pretty much Sosuke's like, hey, just what I want, Hitsuji. And like, they're good rivals, right? Well, Kiyoshi gets back to town pretty much and gets dropped off in front of the Gates of Hell restaurant pretty much, right? And it's really funny because we just see like, oh man, Sosuke was in the car that drove him home pretty much, right? And gosh, he escorted him home, but he can't say goodbye. These two are just such good friends, right? But eventually the two of them sort of get out the car being like, oh yeah, what's going on here? As we just see, oh my gosh, Cook, the Exorcist bird, is getting eaten by a dog pretty much. They go through and save Cook, but then they're like, wait a second, if Cook's here, then that must mean, as both Hitsuji and Kiyoshi run into the Gates of Hell restaurant, and Sasaki's in there being like, oh my gosh, welcome back, guys, but also, oh my gosh, Mr. Tosaka's here, pretty much, right? And of course, it's the reunion of the exam teams, like, man, Mr. Tosaka, Kiyoshi, and Sosuke all here together, pretty much. But along with that, we see that Mr. Shuten is here as well, right? And of course, as we remember, both of these two characters are part of the Demon Realm Special Forces, right? Sosuke pretty much comes and interacts, or Mr. Shuten interacts with the two, Sosuke and Kiyoshi, pretty much. And eventually, they just all sit down and get to the whole point after talking for a little while with the whole idea of the reason they're in Naraku City is to do some environmental survey following the Black Parade, pretty much, right? And being that they're in the neighborhood, they figured they'd swing by. And both Sosuke and Kiyoshi are like, oh, so you're not staying for longer. But of course, as all of this happens, we also get understood to the whole idea of Kiyoshi being like, hey, if I remember right, the commander of the Demon Realm Special Forces, that's the Cross Paladin Goro Shishido, right? Of course, Shishido, who didn't come to the big Cross Paladin Exorcist meeting a few chapters ago. And with that, Sosuke's like, yeah, I mean, I know the name, but I've never seen that guy's face pretty much, right? Kyoshi's like, yeah, now that you're saying it, like, I don't think I have either, right? As we just see the Shuten just explains, like, hey, well, Shishido really actually shows his face. Like, he's almost always in the Demon Realm. And, oh, I didn't know that we could actually do expeditions to the Demon Realm. That's pretty cool, right? I wonder where the next arc of the story is going, right? We'll get there in a second. But pretty much we just get the whole idea of Saki being like, hey, he's an independent sort who really just goes and does whatever he wants. And like, hey, not really the type for keeping in touch pretty much, right? As pretty much the whole idea is like, hey, but why do you two have to go and fetch him pretty much, right? And Tosaka just explains like, hey, the commander of the Demon Realm Special Forces has gone missing in the Demon Realm. And both Kiyoshi and Sosuke are like, what are you? That's crazy, right? as the whole idea of the two of them are like, yeah, it's almost been 3 weeks. And, like, he's a free man, but we've never really, like, lost contact with him like this before, right? And, of course, Shuten has to rein in the whole conversation and make it funny, being like, hey, what's even more concerning is that he never missed one of his favorite idol's concerts. And I love Kiyoshi being like, and you're worried about that? As Sasaki literally drops a cigarette out of his mouth, is like, well, no, it's the horde, the humanity, no, it can't be, no, I don't want to believe it, pretty much, right? As we just get the whole idea of like, yeah, well, we got to go save him, pretty much, we got to go find what he's up to, we'll be back at some point, like, hey, so we'll see a Sasaki, see a Kiyoshi, see a Sosuke, like, we'll see you guys later, pretty much. And they start to walk out the door, and of course, as they walk out the door, Sasaki's like, hey, Kiyoshi, like, do you want to join him over there in, like, the Demon Lord? I think it'd be, like, a good place to get, like, rehabilitated, pretty much, right? And both Shuten and Sasaki are like, you're adding people onto our crew, pretty much, right? And Sasaki's like, I mean, more eyes, the better to find somebody, right? And it's like, hey, Kiyoshi, also, if you're aiming to become a cross paladin, you should probably go and meet Shishido, pretty much, right? And, like, also, you need to experience Demon Realm at least once. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do it then. And Sasaki also points over like, oh, Sosuke, go with him. And Sosuke's like spits out his ring, like, what are you talking about, right? And he's like, hey, I'll let Concordia know for you. You're going to be a cross paladin too, aren't you? And Sosuke's like, yeah, and like, well, when you put it that way, sure, I'll go along, right? And Sasaki's like, all right, Shuten, thanks for having him along with you, pretty much, right? And Shuten's like, God damn it, like, you Sasaki, you're fucking something, right? But pretty much it's just the whole idea of like, hey, this isn't going to be like the Grand Cross Paladin test part 2. It's not going to be like Memento Force, pretty much is what Shuten says. If you're dead weight, I'm leaving you to die, pretty much, right? As the whole idea, Shuten's like, hey, I'll admit that you two are strong, but you're newbies to the Demon Realm, so don't hold us back. As we see that, of course, they're all getting ready to head to Demon Realm. They're in their special uniforms, pretty much, which is pretty much just like these special, like, big, oversized jackets. It's like, hey, the mission to fetch Shishido, the missing cross paladin, starts now. Yeah, good chapter of Kiyoshi, man. This chapter's progression is just so funny and awesome to me. I love how he sort of like sit down being like, oh yeah, Kyoshi's healed, and like, oh man, the Demon Realm, the Shishido guy we learned about a few chapters ago, and oh hey, Kiyoshi, go. Sosuke, go with him too. It's good manga, you know what I'm saying? I really enjoyed this chapter of Kiyoshi, but don't have too much else to really harp on it about there, right? But with that, we get to a chapter where there is a lot of things that I want to say about it, and that's Akane-banashi, chapter number 175. As we understand, the beginning of this chapter is just a little bit of a flashback where this chapter is titled, Can You Reach? I almost forgot the chapter title there. What am I doing? Did I forget how to review Weekly Shonen Jump manga? But either way, the beginning of this chapter is Master Ikin walking through the halls of the Arakawa school, pretty much, right? And of course, he hears the whole confrontation where Master Issho, why am I forgetting names all of a sudden? Master Issho told Akane, like, hey, you have to win without making the audience laugh. And of course, we just see that Issho is just like, or not Issho, Ikin is smiling a little bit, being like, oh, that's pretty interesting, right? But as he's sort of sitting here, we see that he's watching the Zunin Prize performance, right? And he's like, well, Akane, you're up next. How are you going to tackle this one? As we, of course, just hear like the MC being like, hey, our next competitor is Akane Arakawa. She walks on the stage and, of course, sits down on the mat, right? And as she's doing this, she starts to get into the beginning part of her story, right? We learned what this was called a long time ago. I don't remember, right? But she's like, hey, well, in Japan, there's a lot of number of ways that somebody can be described as cheap. A skinflint, a tight-word miser, and there's also the word mukai shizuru, meaning doesn't know 6 days. Because, of course, whenever you count with your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to the 5th, you can't count anymore by curling your fingers. But to count the 6th day, you have to release your fingers to continue. But a cheapskate, once he's grasped onto something, will never let go. That's why he doesn't know 6 days. In the time of Edo, there were canals and waterways with rivers flowing all over the place, and along one of these rivers walked a particularly cheap father and son. As the father was walking along the riverbank, he then tripped on a rock and fell right into the water. As we cut into the actual Rakugo story here, As we see Akane's being like, blah, 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 hurry, get me out, pretty much, of course, mimicking the father. As the son just be like, hey, help you get out, but, like, I can't swim. And the son looks around being like, oh, mister, excuse me, over there, pretty much, like, hey, my dad fell into the river. Could you save him? And this other guy looks over and just be like, how much will you pay me, right? And the son's like, how much? But, like, he's going to sink and drown pretty much, right? And the guy's like, well, yeah, I mean, I can save him. So, like, how much is he worth to you pretty much, right? And the boy's like, how about 1 Ryo? And the guy's like, 1 Ryo, don't waste my time to get naked and jump in a river. I don't know if I can do that pretty much. And he's like, how about this? 5 Ryo, that's my counter offer. And the boy's like, 2 Ryo, like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, did 2 sound good? And he's like, 5 Ryo, and like, just please, like, 3 Ryo, like, maybe. And he's like, no, 5 Ryo. If you want me to save him, you better pay me right now. And of course, Akane just says, like, and meanwhile, as he was drowning, the father spoke up to say, 5 Ryo is way too much. Talk him down to 3, kid. And the entire audience just laughs at this happening. And of course, as everybody in the audience just laughs, we just get reaction shots from literally everybody. We see Hikaru and Karashi look over like, wait, like, everybody just laughed. And Tyson's even like, wait, Akane just made the audience laugh. Like, wait, what's going on here? As we just think it's Tyson's like, wait a second, like, that's totally normal, though. Like, it's always a good thing whenever the audience laughs. But, like, Akane was so up on all of that various things, like, wait, like, what's going on here? As we see that Karashi's sitting here in the back also thinking, like, man, this feels wrong. Even if she changes her strategy and goes for laughter, she could do it like yesterday and really, like, accentuate all of the comical side of the story. But she's just, like, talking very naturally. Like, she has her execution slipped out and, like, gone in sync with her intentions pretty much. Like, what's going on here? As Karashi's just sitting there like, no, wait, no. As pretty much she's like, nah, she's not intending for all of that. She's not trying to make them laugh. As of course we see Master Ikin is sitting here watching the performance on his phone. And we just get some narration from his perspective as he's just thinking like, hey, the funny parts, the sad parts, performers will add their own flavoring, trying to get the most twists and turns out of the story. However, the story they're trying to read is very hard to improve. It's almost like a classic dish that's been beloved over the ages. Show it off as it is. The classics are designed to make the audience laugh without any extra work, and the performer shouldn't need to add anything to try to force the audience to laugh. That was Master Issho's meaning and his lesson. So you can reach that state of mind, Akane. And this is just a really cool thing as we understand that, like, yeah, Akane does not need to make anybody laugh. She just doesn't need to try to make them laugh. She just needs to tell the story as is, in its purest form. And that's what Master Issho has been looking for this entire time. It's just good writing, man. What can I really say about it, right? But ending off on this little bit of a message, Master Ikin just says, like, so can you reach that state of mind, Akane? Of course, being like, oh, is Akane there, or does she still have a little bit of ways to go, pretty much, right? But of course, as all of this is happening, we now cut into a flashback of course, Akane outside on the beach last night. As she's being like, no, it's not working. And she's thinking like, hey, I've got a good grasp of it now, but like, I won't win the Zunin prize at this rate. Like, I can just tell. I'm still missing something. As Akane's just standing in the water raiding up against her ankles, and she looks up towards the moon in the sky. And as she sees it, something comes to mind, and she's like, wait, he said that I don't have the sight. And she's like, no, I misunderstood the meaning of sight. What I ought to be looking at. And that's where we end the chapter on this sort of cliffhanger of, oh, what should Akane be looking at? What is her true goal? As we just end off on this really cool panel of Akane just sort of like sitting here, her silhouette is sort of obscured in shadow. And behind her, there's almost like this glowing reflection just there behind her, almost like the gaze of the audience is sort of what I'm guessing, but what do I know pretty much, right? Great chapter of Akane-banashi. I love not only Akane starting her story, but legitimately, whenever she gets to the whole point where the father's like, hey, 5 Rio too much, and everybody laughs with everybody else, I'm like, wait a second, like, Akane's had one goal, not to make the audience laugh. And like, it's honestly a big shock whenever you're reading and like, wait a second, oh, hold up, like, what's actually going on here? And of course, we get the whole reveal of it being like, hey, you can still make people laugh. You just don't need to try any harder to do it, pretty much. And yeah, just good chapter manga. Akane-banashi, great chapter this week. And as always, Akane-banashi, Shonen Jump's best manga, continues to be Shonen Jump's best manga, right? And with that, let's move on to Blue Box, chapter number 222. There are too many chapters of this series now. I legitimately cannot believe this, right? But either way, this chapter really just focuses, or this chapter is titled, A New Challenges to Face, pretty much, right? As the beginning of this chapter is just like, oh my gosh, new first years have come into the badminton club, right, and to the school in general, and oh my gosh, they all look up to Taiki because he's so cool. He's been to nationals, pretty much, right? The whole idea is just Taiki being like, hey, I need to like step up my game because I need to beat Yusa, pretty much, right? Oh my gosh, Chinatsu is also going to university. She's going to the club expo. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, join our club, the manga club, right? The Akaindo club, the travel club, right? And pretty much everybody's like, oh, I should join that one. And eventually some guy just comes over trying to like persuade Chinatsu to enter one of these clubs, pretty much, right? But she's like, I don't really, but she's not really able to walk away because all of these people are just like hounding her like, join our club, pretty much, right? But oh my gosh, Haru goes to the same college. He shows up, gets Chinatsu out of that situation, right? And the two of them just like have some talk about how much freedom college really gives you. And as they're sort of walking around, oh my gosh, we see Chinatsu's neighbor here, of course, who we now know is Iozaki. And Haru's like, oh my gosh, that's Iozaki. Like, I never thought I'd see him around here, pretty much. As you just explained, Iozaki is like a prodigy in the world of badminton. He was on the great team whenever he was in elementary school, and he's pretty much being looked to be selected for the national team in the future, pretty much. And Chinatsu's like, that's crazy. That guy's my next door neighbor, pretty much, right? And Haru's like, man, I wonder if he'll play against me. But, like, he also mentions the whole idea of, like, hey, if Taiki went up against him, he'd probably learn so much. Oh, my gosh, that's pretty crazy, right? Oh, I wonder what's that building up. Oh, what it's building up is we now see here in the moment, Iozaki has gone over to the high school that Yusa goes to. Of course, Shuji Yusa, the brother of Haruto, right? As we see the two of them just have this little bit of a conversation about, like, wanting to go to nationals, Shuji's like, hey, fight me pretty much in badminton, teach me some new skills, and like, hey, he just explains like, hey, I need to understand how much stronger other people have gotten and to pretty much how much I've grown in the past year. It's precisely because I compete that I can truly enjoy myself and realize my own strength, right? And Yozaki's like, so, you want me to pretty much tell you to strength for some of our players? Like, you got a particular opponent in mind? And of course, Shuji's like, yes, first of all, my little brother, but also this kid named Inomata. Oh, dun da 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 da. And of course, we just end the chapter, Taiki is playing some badminton at the school. He beats this guy. Whoa, look at that, Taiki won. He is so cool, right? And of course, Kudo comes over, and like all the girls like, oh my gosh, he's so cool. Maybe we can date him one day. But he comes over like, no, you don't understand. There's this woman who went here before. Her name was Chinatsu Senpai, and she was the ace of the basketball team. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're perfect for each other, right? But of course, as this is happening, Hina's in the back corner being like, yeah, about that. And that's where we end Blue Box. Good chapter, just like not much to say. And while Blue Box is like making strides to further the story, I need some big art to happen right about now. That's like big and like, oh my gosh, here's a bunch of things going on. Like, not like, I don't know. Blue Box is like getting almost stagnant for me right now. Like, we're not really evolving anything, but like nothing is also devolving either. It's sort of like staying steady. And like, granted, that's how life is. Things don't really happen to get like bad or worse until like it all happens in a jumbled mess at once. But like at the same time, I don't know. I'm sort of reading this manga to like, I don't know. Blue Box is fine, though. Good chapter, but just, I'm sort of sitting here wanting something more from this story, right? But either way, Blue Box was a fine chapter at the end of the day. I almost typed Blue Box 3 times or to 3 Bs. Like, what is that? Like, bombastic Blue Box or something like that? I don't know, right? But either way, moving on, we have 2 chapters left, and my stomach has been rumbling for no lie, I think the past 45 minutes. I need to get through these chapters because my stomach is going to tell me, like, oh my gosh, I need to eat, right? But either way, I hope my stomach growling has not come up over the microphone yet, because I'm honestly a little scared it has. I'm going to be listening back to this footage, like editing, and be like, oh, there's my stomach growling. That would be another Glowplasma L. We're really getting into the Glowplasma L's this video, right? But eventually moving into the Elusive Samurai, chapter number 219. Wait a second, that could not be right. Blue Box is not on chapter number 222. It's on chapter number 212. I was about like, yeah, Blue Box started after the Elusive Samurai. What's going on here? There we go. We figured it out. It's number 112 or 212. Oh my god, I can't count anymore, right? Either way, the Elusive Samurai, chapter number 219, this chapter is titled Tomoe 1352. A lot of this chapter really focuses around Ayako, as she learns a little bit about her family lineage in the beginning of this chapter. This happened a long time ago, but it's now getting explained to us pretty much. Pretty much like, hey, the Mochizuki family was the core of the Kiso Yoshinakawa's army, along with your hero, Tome Gozen, pretty much, right? When Prince Yoshikaka died in battle, Tome Gozen was carrying his child, pretty much. Tome was as strong as the Yasha spirit, so her daughter was named Himayasha, and we sheltered her, pretty much, right? And she came out of age and married the head of the Mochizuki family, pretty much. And in other words, you have Tome's blood in your veins, Ayako, right? And this really pumps Ayako up, and a lot of this chapter is around her being like, hey, this is going to be my final battle I'm going to face, because I'm guessing I'm going to be bearing a child soon. Like, oh my gosh, it's almost like you're one of Tokiyuki's wives, right? And just eventually getting to this whole idea of like, hey, this is to be her last battle, so she has to do everything she can here in the moment, right? Oh my gosh, she's fighting, she decapitates all of these guys, and oh no, these two guys almost look like they're getting ready to overwhelm Ayako. But we should know better not to trust Ayako. She goes through, holds these two guys by like their necks, twists them off their horses, and there's this really big moment where she just goes through like, hey, like Tome, I am a hero, and I will be a mother. Like, I'm not going to go down here. As she just goes through and just decapitates these two guys by pulling it on their necks, pretty much. It's honestly pretty gruesome, but pretty badass, right? Eventually just getting into the whole idea of like, hey, this Hojo Tokiyuki go through its way down, get to Takayuji, pretty much, right? As we see that Tokiyuki is riding on a horse, and Shizuku and Gimba are also on a horse following him, right? We also learn about the pseudo-win condition of this battle, as it's this thing called this obsidian Hamiyama arrow by tongue and teeth, pretty much, right? It's this obsidian arrow that Shizuku has spent 10 years charging spirit energy into, pretty much, or divine power, as they call it in this series. And if fired into Takayuji's back, it'll pretty much expel all of the negative demon energy, making it just be a battle between the man Takayuji and the man Tokoyuki, pretty much, right? But as all of this pretty much goes through, Tokyo's like, how do we know his back's a weak spot? And Shizuku explains hey, remember when Akie fired an arrow all that time ago? It made a wound that pretty much hasn't fully healed, right? And it's created a slight deformity in his divine power. As we pretty much learned that they were talking about this in Masamune's workshop, and Masamune said hey, this arrow isn't going to pierce through anything, almost like a sheet of cloth could pretty much stop it, right? Which is why I'm going to make you a special weapon with Ginba's explosives. It's a powerful and will break after only one use. So you'll have to surprise him and bring it all out before you can take that shot, pretty much, right? As we understand, this is a weapon called the Darumazahaze, or the Darumahaze, an iron crossbow with an incendiary arrow created by Masamune, pretty much, right? As I just love how Gimba's sitting here, he's using this thing it's on his arm, and he's just covering up his face with his mask, as eventually he morphs his mask into the visage of Akie, right? As Akie comes through, catches Takayuji off guard, as Ginba fires the arrow pretty much, and it goes through and completely destroys all of Takayuji's armor here in the second, right? And Takayuji falls to the ground, and Ginba's like, hey there, I blew all of his armor off, I did what you wanted me to do. As pretty much Takayuji's like, hey, now we just need to shoot him with the Hamiya, and Takayuji is finished. But Shizuku looks up no, he's not finished yet. As we see all of the possessed energy flies and bursts off of Takayuji, ripping open his shirt here in the moment. And it makes all of his weapons clatter off his body. His entire shirt and a lot of his clothing gets ripped off here in the moment. As Takayuji goes down, buries into his hand to the ground, and pulls out this weapon almost, it looks like a spinal cord almost, right? As Takayuji says like, oh, this heirloom naginata, it's so grotesque and vile, but so often I abandon it on the battlefield. But when I'm desperate, luck returns to my hand. As Shizuku just realized, no, instead of forcing all of his divine power to stay inside of him, the god within Takayuji has chosen to expand it with abandon in order to strengthen Takayuji's flesh. And now, Takayuji will be at full power as an evil god. As Takayuji turns around and looks back to Tokuyuki, holding the naginata in his hand. You hateful Hojo brat, you alone I cannot forgive. As we just see this face of torment and possession just on Takayuji's back, expelling all of this energy here in the second. I am so excited for the final battle of the Elusive Samurai. I loved Ayako's moment. I love Ginba's moment here. And yeah, I love Shizuku here as well. And just like, damn, this is really cool development. I love, instead of like shooting him with this arrow and calling it win condition that way, now it's a whole lot harder. Really good chapter of the Elusive Samurai. I love this one this week. And with that, that makes one final chapter to talk about. Witch Watch, chapter number 218. This chapter is titled Cat and Wolf's Fugue. Fugue? Is that how you say that word? I just read that and we're going to search that up real quick. It's F-U-G-U-E. How do I say this? Oh, I've pressed a button, but I've got to remember I got to turn off direct on my headphones so I can listen to other things. Fugue, that is how you say it. And fugue apparently means, in the psychiatry word, a state or period of loss of awareness of one's identity, often coupled with flight from one's usual environment associated with certain forms of hysteria and epilepsy. Okay, now knowing what this word means, it makes a whole lot more sense for this chapter. Of course, as it's titled, this is a chapter about the cat and wolf. Of course, Nimue and Keigo, or Wolf, and all of that various stuff. Opening up this chapter, I knew this was going to be a good one, and you know what? Kenta Shinohara, you never let me down. Pretty much, Keigo and Nimue were pretty much having a phone conversation with each other to start off this chapter, and Keigo is doing his normal, talking about all the hipster shit that nobody cares about, pretty much, right? As you just get to this whole idea of, at this point in time, Keigo and Nimue are talking to each other a whole lot more, of course, because each of the two of them harbor feelings for the other. And Keigo's like, man, we talk on the phone once a week now. We gotta be pretty close to being good friends, right? And of course, we turn to page and Nimue's being like, what is up with that guy, right? That was another totally meaningless phone call. Why? What is all of this? We talk once a week now, but, we just chat about stupid and random stuff. What even is the point? He can't be trying to, get across anything, can he? I mean, he just babbles on about niche hipster trivia that no normal girl cares about. Well, all I do on the phone is the equivalent of just smiling and nodding. What in the world is the purpose of all of this? It doesn't feel like we're going in any sort of romantic direction, and he certainly isn't inviting me to turn it in that direction either. It's totally platonic, and I guess that means he's just not interested in romance or anything, but, we've gotten to be closer friends, so part of me was hoping he might be looking for more. And of course, this whole time, Keigo's just in his room being like, man, she has to get that I'm interested in her now. And she's like, man, there's no way he'd be ever interested in a girl like me. As of course, we now see that Nimue just goes to her phone and texts Keigo hey, can we hang out Saturday? I want to talk to you, right? Oh my gosh, they get pretty much out to the, park pretty much and are walking around, and we really don't see most of the conversation, as you just get the whole idea as Keigo's like, what, no way, Wolf confessed his love to you? And Keigo's like, what do you mean? He's like, God, you're kidding me, Wolf, did he seriously do that? No way, it's Wolf, it's totally possible, I should have expected this to happen almost. He's like, hey, he's faithful to his desires, and if he wants to do something, then you better damn well know he is going to do it, right? And this leads Keigo to asking the question, hey, then what did you say about all of that? As Nimue just says, hey, I know I'm attracted to both Wolf and Keigo, but I can't really give either of them an honest answer until I've sorted out all of my feelings and decided to pretty much focus on one of them. Not that I can necessarily tell Keigo that. So Nimue's just like, I'm not telling you, pretty much. And Keigo's like, what do you mean, right? As Nimue just turns around, she's like, hey, but what do you think, Keigo? would you be okay if me and Wolf started dating? And Keigo is just like, oh, I don't know what to say about that. And sort of like takes a big pause before he says anything. And he's just like, I mean, it's your choice at the end of the day. And if Wolf said something like that, then I know he wouldn't mean it as a joke. So, like, that's a decision between the two of you. And I don't have the right to butt in. I'm not Wolf, pretty much, right? And Nimu's like, hey, I see. Thanks for coming today. I'll just see you later. And she just walks off, leaving Keigo here all alone. As Keigo just has to think about all of this. Like, he's like, damn it, Wolf. Like, how dare you do all of this? Like, gosh, it must have been that day whenever I came over and saw Nimu crying. Like, what does he think he's doing? Like, he's my other self. And he went and did that first. And he's like, no, it's just me. I'm just being a lame loser and procrastinating on it. Like, I'm not going to take this lying down, pretty much, right? As Keigo walks back to the Otogi household, and we see that Kanchi and Morito are pretty much standing there, and he's like, oh, hey, you're back, Keigo. Want to go do some training? Turn into Wolf, pretty much, right? And Keigo's like, no, I'm not doing that. You're going to fight me instead, pretty much, right? At this point, we cut over to Nimu just living her general life. We see that she's finally mastered the art of transforming into a pigeon, right? And she's so happy and proud about it. But of course, as well as she's doing these great things, she's also worried about the whole idea of there's going to be a fight whenever Nico is restored, and I have to give myself options to fight just in case. And of course, as she's thinking about this, she's thinking like, oh, I've been practicing on my own, just like Keigo as well, right? And like, oh no, I can't be thinking about all of that. As she turns into a pigeon and just flies away, thinking like, hey, I don't want to think right now. Like, why did I even fall for Keigo in the first place? Like, I just don't remember. And of course, as she's flying around, she of course happens to come across both Keigo and Morito fighting in a field pretty much. And she's like, oh, Morito and Keigo down there, right? As you just see that Morito's going through and beating the ever-loving shit out of Keigo pretty much. Like, it's literally the nicest way I can put it. And Morito's like, hey, Keigo, like, come on, stop, man. Like, you're telling me to go all out is, like, completely nuts. If I hit you for real, you're going to end up with way more than just a bloody nose, right? And he's like, hey, I know you're practicing with the float spell just so you can be ready in case anything happens, but this is no way to really practice any kind of technique, right? Like, hey, if you want combat practice, just transform into wolf. And Keigo's like, no, I'm not doing that. Say, for example, that there's like this girl that I like out there. If that girl was ever to be in danger, am I just supposed to transform into wolf and just let him protect her every time? Would that just be my entire life? Morito, I'm not stupid, and I'm aware that no matter how hard I'll try, I'll never be stronger than wolf in a brawl. But even still, I want to someday be like you one day, Morito. And I know all of this is crazy to say, but I can't stay the way I am now either. And if I can't stay this way, then I at least want to get strong enough to be able to respect myself. And until I can do that, I can't tell Nimue that I'm in love with her. And of course, not only Nimue is here in this field, seeing all of this happen here in the moment, but also Morito is just like, wait a second, like, you're in love with Nimue? And Keigo's like, what are you kneeling over for, man? And he's like, hey, I hear you, Keigo, I'm ready. Bring it on, pretty much, right? And it's like, hey, I'll give it everything I've got. As Morito and Keigo really start to seriously brawl. Keigo is going over and using the float spell while Morito is trying to chase him and fight him here in the moment. And of course, as all this happens, we just get some narration from Nimue's perspective. As she's like, oh, I remember now. At first, it simply felt like we were just on the same wavelength and that we had the same issues. But then, when I watched you face your own weakness, Keigo, no matter how beaten and battered you were, you still got back up again and again. As we just see that Keigo sort of yells, now, while going through and fighting Morito. Morito leans back for a punch and goes through to follow through, pretty much doing like the big old corkscrew in the air, pretty much. As Keigo just jumps over him, almost in the twirl of an ice skater. As Nimue just thinks, I remember, I already admire you for your strength. As we see that Keigo just comes through and uses a move that he calls Blizzard Edge and knocks Morito straight onto the ground. And he's like, oh gosh, Morito, are you okay? And he just stands up like, that was awesome, Keigo. And Keigo's like, damn it, it did no damage. He's like, what am I doing here, right? But Nimue the pigeon flies away here in a moment, just thinking like, hey, Keigo, I'm the weak one, not you, but I know that I can get stronger too. Strong enough that if someone tells me how I feel, I'll be confident enough to hear their answer. And I'm not going to hesitate any longer. I'm going to get my feelings sorted out. And then I'll give both of them my answer. And that's where we end Witch Watch this week with this great chapter about being able to respect yourself. And until you can love yourself for who you are, you can't do anything else. Damn, we had some really good chapters of manga this week, man. It's legitimately going to be hard to sit down and rank all of these chapters from what I thought was my favorite series of the week all the way down to my least favorite chapter of the week. Because here's the fun part, that's the section of the video we're in now. So going through and looking at all 14 of these series, I gotta take one of my gloves off. Because fun fact, I've been recording this entire video with gloves on because the room I'm currently sitting in is a solid 65 degrees and I'm getting pretty cold. So now I gotta unglove one of my hands so I can properly move around my mouse pad to do all of these video related things here, right? But I think we're going to be better off starting at the bottom this week, as I legitimately think that, what was my least favorite chapter of the week? I think my least favorite chapter was probably Harukaze Mound. As I mentioned earlier, I want to like this series, and I do like this series, but I just don't have much to say about it, and whenever I don't have much to say about anything, it sort of just means, it's fine. I don't know how baseball is played, and that sort of ruins my reading of this series a little bit, right? Right above that, we will put Ping Pong Peril, if I can spell Peril right, is it P-R-I-L? Yeah, it's P-R-I-L, that's how we spell it. And right above that, we will throw in a solid Ekiden Bros, pretty much, right? So I really feel confident in about those being the bottom three there. I think right above Ekiden Bros, we're going to be throwing in a blue box. I think I'm pretty happy with that one right there. And now comes a hard part. Actually, no, I think we can narrow this down a little bit more before we get into, what were the really good chapters. Hima-Ten, Elusive Samurai, and Someone Hertz were also all very good. I think we're going to put Someone, Hertz, right above Blue Box, and, oh gosh, the Elusive Samurai and Hima-Ten were both great this week. The Elusive Samurai for not only showing us how Ayako comes through, but also getting us ready for the final battle of Takayuji, while Hima-Ten was just man, this cute chapter about Kanai and Imori going to their school. But granted, if there's anything that sort of ruined one of these chapters, is yeah, Hima Nono's here. So I think for that reason, we're going to put Hima-Ten right above Someone Hertz. And we're just going to throw in the Elusive Samurai right above that. Samurai. There we go. Okay, and that now leaves us with how many series? 7 if I'm not mistaken. Ruri Dragon, Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Kagurabachi, Witch Watch, Ichi the Witch, Akane-banashi, and Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. So immediately thinking about these 3 chapters this week, they automatically separate themselves into 2 groups. The chapters that were all there, and the chapters that were excellent, but not quite ones for the memory, pretty much, right? And I think one of these, the ones that weren't quite for the memory, are Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, Ichi the Witch, and Kagurabachi. I think that we're going to put actually no, this is really hard because again, all of these 3 chapters had a lot of good aspects to them. I love the comedy in Kiyoshi. I love just laughing about that chapter. I'm oh yeah, hey, shooting, these 2 are going with you now, and okay, I guess they are pretty much. And also just the lovely moment of Kyosuke, of course, Sosuke's fired, being Kiyoshi, you're welcome here anytime, man. Along with that, Ichi the Witch was just really fun, just seeing the entire cast interact with each other, and oh my gosh, we have Jiki Shron's motivation and the time magic on the ship known as Chronostasis. Oh, it's so very cool, magic hoverboards and all. And Kagurabachi, just it was really fun just seeing the traitor reveal going through here, but even still, with all of that being said, I think I am going to be putting Ichi the Witch in that bottom position. Put Kagurabachi right above it, and right above that, drop an OTX row, if I can type, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi right above it. Again, leaving us with 4 chapters. Ruri Dragon, Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Akane-banashi, and Witch Watch. Off rip, I don't think Witch Watch is my chapter of the week. Is it a great chapter? Yes, but I just don't think it has, like, it just wasn't as good as the R3 in my opinion. Like, it was great. I love Witch Watch. I love Keigo and Nimue. It's probably like one of my favorite parts of Witch Watch, but like, there's other parts of the series that this is so hard, man. I hate whenever there's weeks like this, but I also love it because, like, I just get to sit here and talk about manga. Like, I have a great hobby, man. I love to sit down here being like, oh yeah, this is why I like this series more than this one. Like, it's like power scaling, but for, like, authors, pretty much, right? But, oh man, okay, Ruri Dragon, the idea of the double, and like, treat me, I'm a dragon, let me reintroduce myself. And hey, you wanna know more about dragons? I'll tell you. Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, what am I kidding? I think I've got to give it to Modulo this week. It was just such a good chapter through and through, learning more about Maru, learning more about Saruki, and at the same time, learning more about, oh gosh, what's his name, Odani or something like that? I sort of forget what his name was, and did I close out Modulo? No, I didn't close out Modulo. Osada, that's what this guy's name was. But just learning about him, it was just such a good moment. So Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is going to get my chapter of the week. I think with that, series sort of like start to fall into place now, giving it to Ruri Dragon next. Dargon, what am I typing? Dragon, there we go. Leaving us with Akane-banashi and Witch Watch, and why I loved the realization in Akane-banashi. That Witch Watch chapter is just something that really hits close to home because, like, throughout a lot of the series, I'm not a hipster, right? That's not who I am. But I've often found myself sort of looking at Keigo as a character who I can sort of represent myself through, pretty much being like, yeah, I can understand how Keigo's feeling, not being able to love yourself, getting drawn into all of these rabbit holes. And of course, it's like accentuated into manga, being like, it's being made for comedy. Like, whenever I often think about that chapter of Keigo being a minimalist all of a sudden, right? And just the way that it was portrayed in that way, it's of course made for comedy, but also, like, that's a true thing that people get into. And, like, I totally understand how Keigo falls into these rabbit holes. And of course, with this whole idea of, like, oh, the person he likes and not being able to admit to himself, like, I've been lazy and lackluster, and I can tell myself for a lot of my life, I've been that same way. Not just with, like, romance, of course, as this series goes, but, like, not being able to make decisions when I feel like I really should have been making them and just riding the course of life. Like, sometimes you need to be more proactive and you can't just procrastinate your way through life. And that message that Keigo gives us here really, I think, is just legitimately just great. So I'm going to put Witch Watch in third position, and that leaves Akane-banashi there in the, Banashi, oh, if I can type, oh my gosh, in the fourth position. So, of course, going through all of these chapters, once again, for all of you guys who are being like, I don't understand why you ranked them, let me go through them now. My favorite chapter of the week was Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, followed by Ruri Dragon, Witch Watch, Akane-banashi, Ectus Kiyoshi, Kagurabachi, Ichi the Witch, The Elusive Samurai, Hima-Ten, Someone Hertz, Blue Box, Ekiden Bros, Ping Pong Peril, and Harukaze Mound. And with that, who was my character of the week? And gosh, there are a lot of really good people I think I could talk about. Not only to Rugi from Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. I think Aoi had a good moment in Ruri Dragon, but like she always has good moments in the series. Witch Watch, as I just mentioned, Keigo had such a profound moment this week. And as I'm just looking through the rest of these characters, I don't think there's anybody else I could give it to other than Keigo. I mean, Keigo. He had a great moment. I just think I explained very well why, of me being able to see myself within that character. And I don't know why that didn't come to me sooner, but you know what? I've got Keigo written down on the page now. And yeah, with all of that being said, we're finally at the end of the video. How long have I been recording? An hour and 45 minutes. Damn, this is the longest recording I've had in a very long time from these weekly Shonen Jump videos. That's actually a little bit insane, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, it's 3:50 now. The dining hall reopens on my college campus in 10 minutes. I'm in a building about 10 minutes away. By the time I wrap up this video, get all packed up and get to the dining hall, it'll be open and I can eat. This is amazing, right? But either way, thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 43 of 2025. I know I'm still very behind. It is the 12th of November, and I'm talking about chapters that came out at the end of September. Not even the end of September. We still have a whole nother manga issue that came out in September to talk about, right? But thank you guys so much for watching this video on Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 43 of 2025. I've talked about Weekly Shonen Jump so many times on this YouTube channel. There's going to be a playlist in the description box of this video along with the end card where you can go check all of that out. And of course, this is not only a video podcast, it's also on audio podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, all of these various places. If you listen on a different podcasting platform and like, man, Glowplasma, I want to hear your podcast on there. Let's talk about Weekly Shonen Jump. Reach out to me somehow. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, sort of. I'm really on Twitter. If you need to contact me, find Glowplasma on Twitter and just find me there. That link's also in the description box of this video or the Discord. I've got a Glowplasma Discord for those of you who don't know. I post my new video releases in there, and it's mainly just filled with people I knew from high school and a few other random people who thought it was a good idea to join. So yeah, I don't know there. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Talk about issue number 44, 2025 Weekly Shonen Jump here, hopefully soon and not 3 weeks later. And yeah, with all of that, what'd I do? I talked about the YouTube channel, find a playlist there. I talked about the podcasting stuff. And yeah, good issue of Jump, man. I loved Modulo, Ruri Dragon, Witch Watch, and Akane-banashi were all great. Ultimate Exorcist, Kiyoshi, Kagurabachi, Ichi the Witch, Elusive Samurai, and Hima-Ten are in that middle bracket of good stories. And then someone Hertz, Blue Box, Ekiden Bros, Peril, and Harukaze Mound. We're good. It's just like, yeah, I don't have too much else to say about them there. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. I feel like I'm just like spinning in circles now. I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma signing out.